In this lesson, you'll learn how to develop context menus for your Android apps. To get started, let's filter the demo name column of our worksheet for context. And we get an entry in line 55, and we see that the Java code name is Fragment Context Menu. So let's first fire up the demo. We'll click on App, Fragment, Context Menu. And the demo builds a context menu on a long press of the button. So we'll give it a long press, and there we get our menu. And note that the menu displayed is not shown next to the button, as was the case with our pop-up menu. Now in the app source folder, let's open Fragment Context Menu. I'm going to skip over the code on fragments, as they'll be covered in a separate lesson, and we'll focus on the code pertinent to creating the menu. In line 53, we inflate the menu using the Fragment Context Menu layout. Note that the context menu is defined in the Layout resource folder. So in the Layout resource folder, let's open Fragment Context Menu. And Fragment Context Menu sets up the button we see saying Long Press Me. Here's the button definition starting in line 30. Back in the Java source code at line 54, we use the register for context menu method to cause the onCreateContextMenu menu method below to be invoked when the long press button is pressed. Notice that the long press ID from the layout XML is used as the identifier for a trigger of displaying the menu. We see that ID here in line 30 of the XML long press. And it's referenced here in line 54 of the source code. And in the source code at line 59, we have the method that sets up the menu items. This method adds two items to the context menu that we see appear, labeled Menu A and Menu B. To see what these parameters mean, let's pull up the documentation for the add method. And I'm going to expand this window to do that. So here's the parameters described, and the first group ID is the group identifier that this item should be a part of. And it can be used to define groups of items for batch state changes. Normally, you should use none if an item should not be part of a group, which is what we're doing. So it says menu.none. The second parameter, item ID, is a unique item ID, and we're using A underline item and B underline item as IDs. The third parameter is the order for the item, and you use none if you don't care about the order, and we're using none. And finally, the fourth parameter is the text to display the item, and we're using Menu A and Menu B. Now down in line 66, we see the onContextItemSelected method that's invoked when a menu item is clicked, and it uses the getItemID method to determine the ID to be used in the switch below that activates the code we want associated with each item. That's our lesson on context menus, and we'll continue with more user interface lessons.